Hello there, I'm Rob Day. I'm a product specialist for RSpace, and today I'm going to walk you through an informal demonstration of some of the chemistry functionality that you can enjoy in the RSpace ELN. Currently I'm logged into a demonstration server. This is an advanced sneak peek of our very latest version, and it has a couple of new chemistry features that you won't see in the existing release. Today I'll be walking through a couple of different features to show you. So you can follow along in our documentation by using the link shown here. That's documentation.researchbase.com, and then once you get there, search for chemistry. That will allow you to access the full documentation with details for everything that I'll show you today. As a brief summary, RSpace chemistry functionality includes the ability to draw, edit, and view chemical structure files, and for that we use an open source tool called Ketcher, which we think is extremely effective for producing chemical structures and helping you see your existing structures. You can drag and drop import chemistry structure files either into the gallery or directly to documents. You can hierarchically organize chemistry structures in our file store area called the gallery. We also have a fully functional chemistry structural search engine that will let you find the structures that you've used in different experiments. You can search for and import structures directly from PubChem. You can also look at different available chemistry structures that are already in RSpace, or you can store them in the inventory system along with specialized metadata that then allow you to describe special characteristics of things that you've stored in that system. We can, if we want to, attach also lists of samples of chemistries pulled from the inventory system using a feature called the List of Materials feature. And we can also output cohorts of experiments to look for trends or allow you to track different sorts of variables as they change over time or with the progression of a sequence of experiments using our CSV export feature. I may not have time to show this today. So in the very newest prototype release that I'll show you today, we do have the ability to also perform stoichiometric calculations. This is not generally available in the main release, but it will be available very soon in an upcoming release. And we're also planning additional chemistry features, including integration with things like repositories, including the ChemOcean repository. So if you are using ChemOcean and you are interested in telling us more about how you want RSpace to integrate with the chemistry repository that's already in the ChemOcean product, now is a great time to give us feedback and provide some specific requirements for what you'd like to see in that type of integration. So without further ado, let's jump back to our demonstration server, and we'll go ahead and click on chemistry examples. This is simply an empty document right now with no content in it. I can place that in the edit mode, and you'll notice we have a couple of chemistry features available here in our toolbar. Now, if you do not see these immediately available in your own server, chances are you have not turned on the chemistry integration yet. So you'll want to go to your user area here, and then go to the apps tab, click on chemistry, and be sure that you have enabled chemistry tools for your particular account. You won't be able to see these chemistry tools until you've done that, so do make sure that you've enabled chemistry in the apps area. When you've done that, you can go back to the workspace and you can say create and make a new basic document or any kind of a document you want based on templates or forms that you've previously built. In this case, I'll be working with an empty basic document so I can show you some very basic features. So let's get started. I can click on the chemistry icon to immediately open up the Ketcher chemistry drawing tool. I can use that for drawing molecules if I want to, and then I can insert those immediately onto the page. You'll notice the system will go ahead and show me some basic chemistry metadata for the thing that I've just created. If I want to, I can select it and I can say I'd like to immediately go back to Ketcher to make additional changes, and I could edit this if I wanted to and go ahead and return the edited version back to RSpace. You'll also notice that if I want to, I can open up the Ketcher tool and I could delete what I've already got on here so far, and then I can say I'd like to open up an existing chemistry structural tool, and maybe I'll choose this taxane molecule for my personal collection, and I'll go ahead and add that to the canvas, and then if I want to, I can place it. I can even use the 3D tool to change its orientation if I want to, and say apply, and now I can insert to add that to the document. Now, when you create chemistry structures using a built-in editor, these are considered to be integral parts of this document that you can go back and edit at any time. And they're considered to be content that's created by RSpace. meaning that you can create things here and then you can also go ahead and edit them here. Let's go ahead and save this document. And if I want to now, I could maybe go back to the workspace and I can immediately go ahead and initiate a chemical search if I want to. And then I can say I'd like to open up the exact same taxane molecule that I just used a moment ago and say I'd like to search for this anywhere that it may appear in RSpace. Now, as we know, there's really only one place that it appeared, and that's in the document we just made a moment ago. If this structure had appeared in additional places, you would see that in the search results. I can click this link to go straight back to that document to see how the chemistry molecule was used in the context of that particular document. There's an alternate way that I can work with chemistry files in RSpace too as well. In this first method, I've drawn the structure using the Ketcher tool, and now that's considered an integral part of the document that was created by RSpace itself. I can then go back and make edits to that file anytime I want. But if I prefer to work with some external tool, I can use RSpace as a repository of chemistry structures that I've already drawn or that I've created with a specialized tool outside of RSpace. So let's take a look and see how that works. I'm going to put this document into edit mode, and then I'm going to go to my local computer and I'm going to look for some chemistry examples. And I'll look inside this CDX subfolder here that allows me to access specifically CDX files that have been made using ChemDraw. Now, of course, CDX is a very common format and it's often considered an industry standard. You can see I have a range of CDX files here. Let's just pick one. If I want to, I can now just drag and drop that onto my page. And when I do that, you'll see that in this case, it's a reaction. I can see that immediately, and I can see it on the page, and we'll once again see some chemistry metadata is created. I can click on the Ketcher icon, and that will go ahead and show me the molecule in high resolution. But notice here, in this case, the editing tools are actually grayed out. So why is that? Well, this is a deliberate feature in RSpace that we've done to differentiate between molecules that you've drawn inside RSpace and molecules that you've added from outside of the system. You can use that as a mechanism to control how you will edit these files. By dragging and dropping a file into RSpace that was added by some external mechanism, you can still see it, but you can't actually edit it using Ketcher. What you would do instead is you can look at the info for that file and you can say download. You can then download that to your local computer. You can then edit that file with whatever application you want. And when you're done, you can say upload new version. You can navigate to the file that you've just edited, perhaps using ChemDraw, and say upload. And that will return it back to RSpace as a new version. When we look at the version history, you'll see this is now version 2. You may be familiar with the fact that anytime you drag a document to RSpace, that document is also added simultaneously to the gallery. Let's go ahead and open the gallery in a new window. And you can see the gallery has files here, areas for different sorts of file types. If I go to the chemistry area, you can see the file that I just added. So anytime you drag and drop a file to a document, it's also added to the gallery so that you can potentially use it inside other documents too as well. You also have the option to do bulk uploads immediately to this area. So for example, I could go ahead and I could say I'd like to create a new folder. And I could say we are going to make a folder for specifically mol files. Then I can navigate to that folder. And then I can go to my local computer. I can grab a handful of mol files from my computer. And I can drag and drop the whole lot onto RSpace and they'll all be uploaded immediately. If I want to now, I can go ahead and view these in high resolution, or I can even go ahead and if I want to, I can rename these or duplicate these or move them around into additional subfolders if I want to organize them hierarchically any way that I want. If I now go back to the workspace, as with other types of files in RSpace, I now have the option, if I want to go ahead and say insert from gallery. I can go to the chemistry area. I can go to my mol file subfolder, choose a particular file, say insert and add it to that page and then save it. I'll get that same interesting chemistry metadata here that may be useful for me. And if I look at the info for this item, I can use show link documents to show me that this file is known to have been used in one RSpace document so far, and that's the one that we're currently looking at. This ability to trace your use of files from one place to another is universal in RSpace, and you can use this with any type of file that you've pulled in from the gallery. Alright, so that's creating sketches using Ketcher, adding files to a document by drag and drop, or adding bulk files to the gallery by drag and drop, and then inserting them into the page if that's what I want to do. So what else can we do here? Well, another newer feature in our chemistry functionality is the ability to immediately pull in files from PubChem. Now this is a lovely feature because PubChem probably contains almost every structure you're ever likely to need anyway. I can use this icon to immediately access this feature. I can look for a particular substance using a chemical abstracts number or a name of a known molecule. And if I find what I'm looking for, I can go ahead and just say import the item. And I got to select it first with a checkbox and say import selected. And that will add it to the page as a standard chemistry item. And if I want to, once again, I can go ahead and see I can resize this image if I want to by either dragging or using the resize handlers. I can download this. I can look at its information just like any other kind of structure that I've added. I can even open it up in Ketcher and use the 3D tool to change its orientation again if I want to. But notice that in this particular case, the structure that I've added, again, is not editable inside RSpace precisely because, in fact, it came from an external source. So if you've added RSpace from an external source, you'll need to edit it with an external tool of some kind. And there's a really good reason why we've done that. It has to do with maintaining compatibility of different complex chemistry structures that you've added so that they remain compatibility with the original tool that created them. For the most part, Ketcher will do a great job of creating and editing almost any kind of structure, but if you're using really advanced features from ChemDraw, you're probably going to want to make sure that you edit that structure with ChemDraw so that you maintain compatibility across versions of the molecule. Next up, let's take a look at the new stoichiometric calculation feature in RSpace. Now this is a new feature, we're still putting the finishing touches to it, and you won't see it until our next release. So this will be available for all users very soon, but you won't see it in the release today. Let's go ahead and add a file that we'd like to use in this reaction. So I'm going to click on the chemistry molecule to open up a new Ketcher window. Now I could draw a reaction here. Our stoichiometric calculator is quite clever about understanding what would be a reactant and what would be a product. It uses that by looking for the relative location of structures relative to plus signs and to the arrow indicating a reaction. But to make my life easier here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add an existing reaction file. So let's go ahead and go to my servo demo resources folder and maybe look for an existing reaction file that I can use in this example. So we'll add that to the canvas. So here you can see a fairly standard looking chemical reaction. We've got a couple of reactants and some kind of product at the end. Let's say insert here, and that will add that to my page. In this case, it added it to the top of the page because that's where my insertion point was. Now I can use this icon. Notice you won't see it at first. I have to select the structure to be able to see some optional chemistry features. And I can use this icon to now jump straight to the stoichiometric calculation area. That's going to generate a table for me. I can go ahead and look at the different columns here. And one of the things I can do is, for this first molecule, let's go ahead and say that for this one here, we would like to add maybe 10 grams of material. And now I'll go ahead and say Save Changes. And you'll see that will automatically calculate for me now how many grams of the secondary reactant I should add and what the total grams or mass would be of the product that's expected. I can go ahead and export this as a CSV file if I want to. I'll take a look at that CSV file in a moment, and then I can go ahead and say close. So if I'd like to, I can actually go back to this at any time and re-examine the stoichiometry, or I could go ahead and look at the CSV file that I just downloaded, and I can examine in more detail the characteristics of that reaction in the CSV file. So let's open that up in OpenOffice, and here we can see a tabular variation of that reaction. And if I wanted to, I could even grab that CSV file and drag and drop that straight onto the page too as well. So the last thing I'd like to show you today is another way that you can work with chemistry molecules inside RSpace. So far we've looked at the way that we can add chemistry structures and work with these within the context of an RSpace document held inside the workspace. And this is great when you're recording the work that you're doing and you want to have a legally defensible record of the work that you've performed in your lab. But sometimes you may want to work in a more database-like way and record the molecules in the inventory area. So I'm going to switch to a slightly different server here. This is a server that already has some existing content on it. What I've done here is I've made a chemistry in the molecule in the inventory system, and I've based it on a particular pre-made sample template that allows me to follow a specific custom metadata schema. So I created a template for chemicals that I'd like to use, and in this case I included metadata like the chemical abstracts number, molecular formula, its physical state, and maybe some other fields too as well that I could have added. And once you've made this template, you can use this for recording many different chemicals that all follow a specific format of metadata. What I'm also going to do now is go to the attachments area, and you can see from here I could potentially add chemistry structures that I can get either from the gallery or that I could upload directly to the inventory system. I'm going to go ahead here and say I'd like to add something from the gallery. And then inside the chemistry area, I'll do a quick search for taxane. Select a taxane 3D molecule I already have and say add and say save. So now, oops, my edit lock is refreshed on this particular page because I started editing it earlier. Let's refresh that. I'll say edit. We'll do the same thing again. We'll go to attachments. We'll look for something related to taxane. Select a suitable structure and say add, and add that now as an attachment. So what's nice about this now is, now that I've got this in here, I can either view it as an image, or if I want to, I can view it up in Ketcher tool, which will again allow me to do things like change its three-dimensional orientation to study it a little bit better. What we don't yet have in the gallery is a chemistry structural search engine. That's also planned and will be coming soon. But what's really nice about this approach now is if I want to, I could, for example, go to my templates area and I could search for the chemical template. And then from here, I could look at a list of all of the molecules that have ever been created using that template. You can see we have just one. I could select it, and now I could add that to a basket, and then I could turn that basket into a list of materials. And I could drop a cohort of selected chemicals directly into my workspace as a list of materials that will show which specific chemicals are used in which experiment. Finally, back in the workspace, if I really wanted to, I could then take a set of experiments that have something to do with some common theme, perhaps involving chemistry, and I could look at the unique metadata for this item, and I can find the form ID. This essentially will allow me to search for all experiments of this type, and then I could say search. I can select all of these. I can maybe get rid of any in here that I don't want to include in this for now. I think I'll just go ahead and use all of these. Now I can go ahead and say I'd like to turn the whole lot into a single collated CSV file. And now I can export that CSV file. Now, this particular CSV file isn't going to contain anything particularly chemical related, to tell you the truth, but one can imagine that when we look at this CSV file now, what we have here is a sequence of experiments with each column representing some variable or metadata category and each row representing a single experiment. And now that I've got this in CSV format, I can sort this data, or I can perform functions on it. I can plot one variable relative to another. And this is something that chemists do a lot. So this would allow you to build a cohort of experiments that you can then examine further to understand the progression of one variable relative to another, or the progression of a particular variable over time across a sequence of experiments. Hope you've enjoyed looking at some of these different features that you can use in your chemistry experiments today. If you have any further questions, do feel free to contact us at support@researchspace.com, or of course you're always welcome to use the built-in chat system to go ahead and open a chat window and chat with us. And you can even ask for me, Rob Day, specifically by name if you want to, in that chat, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.